Belfast in 2030 will see a new museum. It's called Belfast Stories. It will house a public space, a creative hub, and a visitor attraction. Now, museums typically have themes: Titanic, or some science foundations, or some specific parts of history, I'm sure you can think. But Belfast Stories' theme is bold and unusual: the personal stories of the people of Belfast.
That sounds pretty interesting, but what exactly is a personal story? Well, a personal story could be about what your career aspirations are, what influences you, maybe your favourite places in Belfast to hang out with mates, and maybe how that differs for what your parents or grandparents would say.
But with this theme comes no small challenge: the need to gather and curate stories to power the building. So in 2024, Belfast Stories partnered with Belfast City Council to find the most creative technology companies in the UK, asking for help to solve their biggest challenge.
My name is Hephzibah.
And I'm Luke, and we're engineers at a technology company called Robson.
And today we're here to share a bit of our journey solving this problem.
While Robson developed most of the technology that we're going to talk about today, this project needed smarts from design and community outreach. So it's important to mention our partners that we worked on this project. One Up Studios, known for their work with Meta VR and the Tate Modern Museum in London, and Nerve Centre, who you might know from their work on Oliver Jeffers' global touring exhibit called Our Place in Space. This concept of a story cycle became the basis of our approach. It seems simple, and it is.
Well, first we need to begin with a trigger. Perhaps you see a TikTok of someone's experience at Belfast Stories. Then we want to capture or collect your story and preserve it by keeping it somewhere safe. Once we have your story, we want to curate the content and provide the tools for human teams to use it for something interesting. Then finally, we want to present the story in an engaging way, ultimately inspiring more people to tell their stories.
This way of thinking about problems is called service design, and is a great way to create a shared language with problem owners and a simple framework to split up the different parts of complex systems. It helps problem solvers like us to focus on the most important questions.
Like, if the goal is to capture a lot of stories, how can we scale that beyond what human teams can do on their own?
And how could we store those stories in a way that lets us do interesting things with them, even things that we can't think of yet? Then, once we have hundreds of thousands, potentially millions of stories, how do we find the great ones? And what does that even mean? Stories are subjective, right? Great stories.
Finally, what's the best way to present stories to visitors to make sure that they, A, tell off their friends, and B, make more TikToks about it?
We worked on this project for 2 years with lots of interesting parts. But today, we're mostly going to focus on the first part of this process: capture.
Now, we're not talking about replacing human interviewers. We're talking about focusing human teams to make sure that they can make the biggest difference, such as amplifying lesser-known voices and building trust with sensitive communities.
Currently, AI has a kind of subtle, uneven competence. It's good at a lot of things, it's bad at some, and great at a few. Some of those can be improved with good engineering, and others will need more time. Could an AI interviewer be good enough? And if there are gaps, are they fixable? Great engineers will also ask, is it worth waiting for the fix to be simply free with progress?
So, how society feels about AI is pretty unpredictable, and it changes as quickly as it's being developed. With this in mind, would people really feel safe sharing intimate stories with AI, or would they feel a bit uncomfortable opening up to a clanker? Of course, the most important point, it needed to look pretty awesome.
So after a year of prototypes and experiments, Story Dreamer was born. Let's meet him. Can I get the house lights brought down?
So, hi Dreamer.
Can I get the audio?
Oh, hello. Wow, there's so many people here. Just imagine the stories that are bubbling in this room. A generation of young minds destined for great things. Now, if you could all form an orderly line, I really want to know what this 6-7 thing is about.
Easy, Dreamer. You'll have time for that later.
Well, Dreamer, why don't you tell us what you've been up to recently?
Well, recently I've been helping to gather stories. It's been fun meeting people. I've really enjoyed talking to people in other languages that now live here.
Dreamer, what's a story you find interesting that you can share with us today?
People trust me to keep their stories, Luke. But I know you and Hephzibah have given me permission to share some of your stories. Folks, an embarrassing fact I found out about Luke is that he has a collection of creepy robot Furbies. No judgment,
This
Luke.
is true.
And Hephzibah, she knows more about bees than anyone I've ever met.
How could you not when they are so interesting?
Okay, Dreamer, we have to get back to the presentation now. Before you get me into trouble.
For your dreadful jokes.
Story Dreamer's core job is an interviewer, of course, so we'll forgive him from getting a little bit excited here. But how did we build it? AI certainly already knows what an interview is. But AI needs a lot of really specific examples to do anything really, really well, especially one that we want to really listen to someone and not just be hell-bent on being helpful. Humanity's best examples of this behavior that we wanted comes from good journalism. So we showed it, or trained, our AI on hundreds of interviews. And this did produce a more curious and listened more AI, picking up on key details to help people that it was talking to develop their stories. But it wasn't enough. So after testing with members of the public, we noticed that a lot of people very normally jump around a lot when they're telling stories. And the AI finds that particularly difficult because it finds it really hard to see the big picture, getting trapped in the detail. In engineering speak, this is called a local minima problem. A good human interviewer, of course, is able in that moment to step back and refocus that storyteller on something interesting they might have talked about a minute or two ago to keep that conversation going. This turned out to be a really hard problem to solve and speaks to a core limitation of the current generation of AI. Basically, the solution, believe it or not, was to actually split Story Dreamer into multiple AIs, actually up to 15, each focusing on a different part of the conversation process. They actually talk silently amongst themselves while listening to you and speaking to you with a single coherent voice. This trick enabled us to fix most of the challenges and the gaps that we've seen with the current generation of AI. Finally, we created a natural, relatable voice that feedback with the public showed builds trust with participants. So to test our solution, we brought all of this tech together in 2 Royal Avenue in Belfast, down beside Primark. It's the old Tesco building, if you know it. And combined it with a presentation space, that kind of a feature that we haven't been able to have time to talk about today.
So this is how it looked and felt. In 10 days, we welcomed over 200 people to tell their stories, in total collecting over 200 stories over the course of the demo. From passionate first-hand testimonies to powerful memories sparked by archive footage to multilingual experiences, we learned so much.
Stories came from people and communities across the city and beyond. This is the reach that we achieved in just 10 days with limited marketing and profile. There is an appetite for people to tell their stories. And it wasn't just passive storytelling. It genuinely guided and supported people to tell authentic stories of real value, like this one from an asylum seeker that we got permission to share. Keep going.
From old age pensioners, young mums, politicians, homeless people, those with special needs, tourists, and even civil servants.
And every day brought new reactions, from happy to sad tears of laughter. The dreamer was as much a confidant as it was an interviewer.
Well, that's all that we really have time for today, but we hope that this gave you a bit of a taste of our journey developing the Story Dreamer. Thank you very much for listening.
So if you haven't posted any questions into the app yet, I appreciate the first presentation often has the first warm-up for this kind of thing. We'll move to Q&A.
Hey folks. Hi folks. How's it going? That was so impressive. I did not know what to expect once that fan started. I just thought we were all going to be nice and cold, and then, wow. I don't know if there's any questions from the audience just yet, but I have a question, first of all. I am obsessed with Halloween. I love Halloween. And anything spooky is my bag. Was there any, because folklore is an expression of like local stories told between people and passed down through generations, any chance that you know of any good stories like that were scary or maybe murder related that would have came out? Anything dramatic?
One of the biggest challenges actually with the project was, Northern Ireland has some history with violence, and we got a lot of stories from that generation that was able to share first-hand stories. And of course, the challenge there is that, not everyone will agree on their version of the story and things like that. So there was a lot of interesting work we also did about like trying to figure out what truth means and what governance means and what share means. But on the interesting stories, there were, most the most interesting, like one little anecdote, it maybe isn't exactly Halloween, but I thought it was super interesting, was we had deliberately built multi-language capabilities into Dreamer. We'd done that quite early, and we tested it in the public, and it seemed to work quite well. But one of the things that we didn't expect was we had a Spanish couple that had come in, and they were speaking English. They now live here. They've lived here for maybe 10 years. And in the interview with the Dreamer, they talked about how they love Belfast and they're creating their life here, but they also love their Spanish culture. And we're talking about all the little things that they like from Spanish culture. And one of the things that we didn't expect Dreamer to do was it said, actually, I can speak Spanish. Would you prefer to switch to Spanish? And they were, of course, a little bit bemused, saying, yeah, okay. And they continued on the conversation completely organically in Spanish, which I hadn't trained it to do that. Yeah. It just kind of recognized that was useful and did it. So, wow. Sorry, I don't have a Halloween story for you.
No, that's no problem. That is amazing. If Story Dreamer, judging from the top most asked question here, if Story Dreamer becomes a particularly skilled and adaptive interviewer, does it have any applications in more serious interviews? For example, job applications with the PSNI, or just generally for job applications?
Yeah, it's a great question. We've had quite a few times. We've had those questions from actually people from some of those organizations for this, and the short answer is, from a technology perspective, absolutely. I guess the challenge is depending on the use case, witness interviews, those kinds of things, you can see in some of those cases the sensitivity and the legal recourse, right, from being able to whether or not you know for sure if that is what the person had said or not, is a little bit trickier. And I would say that the legal frameworks kind of around AI in general and those kinds of things aren't as mature as probably they could be right now. I think technology actually is pretty there. But so I think it's more about the kind of legal frameworks around things to be whether we can actually push those kind of applications in there. But can it do it? Absolutely.
Really interesting. Really interesting. There's some questions actually behind us around natural voice and the accent of Story Dreamer, actually.
Yeah.
A good question from Michael Rock, actually, is why is Dreamer's accent not Northern Irish? Is it just because we feel more comfortable with that? Like, I have to say, listening to Story Dreamer's voice, I feel very at ease with him, you know? Northern Irish can be quite harsh, as you know.
Right. So yes, we've actually, over the space of 2 years, we experimented basically with lots of different accents, and including a couple of different Northern Irish accents, and getting feedback from all of that. And definitely, we got this question a lot. And if we didn't do Northern Irish, often people ask, why is this not Northern Irish? And one of the things that we recognized was, like a lot of cities, Belfast is becoming increasingly cosmopolitan. We have a lot of international people now living here, and this will be a visitor attraction. And one of the things that we tested, basically, as we were going through, was that while local people prefer to have a local accent, actually it seemed to work better for a broader range of people, almost like pushing into this kind of more economic point of like, what is the clearest? So this voice that we used just today ended up being, from public testing, the thing that seemed to be the clearest for everybody if English wasn't their core language. But what we are trying to figure out is, can we, would it be weird, for example, if you were speaking to Dreamer and it absorbed your accent and started speaking like you, or would that be creepy? Or could we find something about you before it had the conversation and it would mimic more like something that you think? There's some good ideas there, but we're still trying to figure that out. But there is Northern Irish accents. I don't have it today to show you, but certainly if anybody's really interested in that, I can show you. I can let you hear a clip of that. But it's pretty good.
Wonderful. Guys, I think that brings us up to time as well. Thank you so much, Luke and Hephzibah. Really appreciate it. That was great. Thanks.